Is the evolution of consciousness bullshit? Good morning, this is Shores of Infinity with your host Chris, and today I want to examine the question: is the idea, the concept of cosmic evolution of consciousness bullshit? There are some spiritual teachers, there have been and are some who say it's bullshit, and some say that's the pinnacle and the linchpin of all. The question is not so much about individual evolution of consciousness, but more about collective or cosmic evolution of consciousness, although those two topics belong together. So the idea of evolution has not been invented by Spencer and Darwin. They have simplified it and reinvented it and made it the basis of what is now called natural sciences, or some only call them sciences. They have marked the death of philosophy in the 19th century and the rise of the natural sciences. The idea of evolution is actually at least as old as the Vedas and Upanishads. Probably comes from India, maybe it's older. And this is, of course, where Sri Aurobindo got the idea from, but not all. Also, he also read modern authors, like Lamprecht, who is basically forgotten right now. Almost no one talks about him. But he had an influence on Sri Aurobindo. Lamarck probably too. More or less at the same time as Spencer and Darwin, there was another guy, a French guy called Lamarck, who had another idea of evolution, which makes just as much or little sense. But it is less materialistic, so it didn't make the cut. And in the 19th century, and around 1900, was exactly where Sri Aurobindo read all these things. Evolution was the big thing. So there were dozens of authors, most of which are not known anymore, not widespreadly known. And this is the thing with philosophy, be it Aristotle or Descartes or Darwin or many others. These people shape our worldview, and then we forget about it and think, okay, that's just known. We know it's like that. No, we don't know it's like that. Someone made it up and it became popular, and 100 years later everyone thinks that's how it is, undisputably. So there's this idea of evolution in biology, in philosophy, in physics even. The Big Bang is a concept of evolution, the expansion of the universe. The aspect we're talking about today is the evolution of consciousness. So there's the first question, of course, that came up in previous videos: what is consciousness and what does the word mean? In Latin it means knowledge. So Tony Parsons says there's no knowledge, so there's no consciousness, there's no knower and no known. In ancient Indian Vedic tradition, consciousness is a different meaning. There's several meanings, actually. There are several words also for consciousness. From awareness up till force, anything can be consciousness. So here the question is, of course, is there any force, be it a being or an impersonal force, behind what is happening in the world, not only on the planet, but in the whole universe? Is there something that leads, that guides, that wills? Or is it all just by chance and accident? And has life on Earth really developed by chance and accident? Some lightnings in the primal soup and the bacteria transformed over millions of years into human beings by chance and accident? Or was there and is there a guiding principle behind it all? So while Sri Aurobindo and Meher Baba, and also newer examples like Clare Graves with his Levels of Human Existence, which is now Spiral Dynamics, of David Hawkins, and so on, they're all directly or indirectly claiming that there is such a thing as evolution of consciousness, and cosmic evolution, and human evolution, which admittedly sounds a little bit religious. And on the other hand, there are those of the neo-Advaita like Tony Parsons, or just nihilists like U.G. Krishnamurti, who say that this is all gobbledygook, this is all bullshit. They don't say it's bullshit, but they mean it's bullshit. They say it's not true. And why do they say that? Because they haven't experienced it. So everything that is theory remains theory and thus more or less worthless until you have experienced it. Until you have experienced it, it is a theory you believe in. It's a set of beliefs that has nothing to do with science. It is a religion, and most of what we call science today is also a religion, because people believe in it. They don't want to be convinced otherwise. They hold on to these concepts. These concepts give them something to believe in. Most people need and want something to believe in, otherwise they feel lost. And they want something external to look upon and to study and to be experts in, instead of looking inside, where in many cases trauma lurks. Ooh. But is it really possible to find the answer to this question of evolution of consciousness inside? Yes, it is. You can experience things like evolution, consciousness, reincarnation. And once you've experienced it, there's no need to believe in it or not to believe in it, because you know it's true by your own experience. That is actually, it's not an anecdote, it's the only thing that is reliable, your own experience. Which in my view proves that there is consciousness. I think it's undisputable that there is such a thing that we may call consciousness. It's semantics to discuss exactly what the word means. We all know what it means. Intuitively, there is some form of consciousness. Even people who deny it, they employ consciousness to deny it. Things like reincarnation and evolution of consciousness and cosmic evolution, they're a little bit more difficult to experience and rare, but it is possible. And until that time, there's no point in discussing it. It's no point discussing. Several people come together who have no clue and no experience to discuss theoretically if such a thing exists or does not exist. Also, it makes little sense to listen to someone who has had the experience and then believe it and repeat it like a parrot. But why do these people tell us about it? Because they want to be a counterweight to all this materialism that surrounds us, or to all this relativism that surrounds us, to all this religion that surrounds us. And they run the risk consciously to become a new religion. They don't want to, but they think it's better to run the risk to create a new religion than to just let materialistic religions swallow up the world. Absolute materialism leads to destruction. Because if there's no higher goal or any kind of goal of nature, humanity, the divine, consciousness, whatever, then it doesn't really matter what I'm doing here. I can just create havoc and there's no consequence. Not to me, not to others, not to the world. While in idealist thoughts, concepts, and spiritual traditions, the opposite is true. If there is an evolution of consciousness, then it does make sense to look inside and find the truth and find access. And once you have access to the truth, then to work for the good of humanity, for the development of humanity, for the unity of humanity. And of course, this search for truth and unity and peace and so on, this can be a trauma response. Just as science is probably a trauma response, this idealistic thinking of human unity and human consciousness may be a trauma response to find some meaning in this meaningless world and to find a higher purpose than to just suffer individually. Maybe. Yes, it's possible. It's even likely. But there is something called experience. Maybe you think there is no consciousness, but there is something called experience. You experience something. There is someone who experiences it and something to be experienced. Even if it is illusion, even if it is Maya, even if it is a dream, there's still a dream and someone who dreams it. This whole Maya business would be for naught if there was no audience. We are the audience here, you, me, the human beings and other living beings. We are the audience experiencing this. Either this Maya illusion veiling the cosmic truth and evolution, or the thing that natural sciences say that is unfolding by chance and accident. Whatever it is, reality or dream or Maya, something is happening and we are experiencing it. So at least there is experience. There is some kind of perception or feeling. We sense something. And if we go inside into our bodies and sense what is going on in there, we will encounter trauma. And once we resolve this trauma, being it individual or ancestral or collective, you will find some kind of trauma there, I promise you. And once you're through that, or partly through it, you will start to experience other stuff. Like, for example, reincarnation and evolution. And then you can be sure that this exists, or you can still say, okay, it's probably imagination. But then everything is imagination. Now, if you doubt even your own experience, then you have to doubt everything. And it is a good thing to be skeptical up to a certain point. Up to a certain point. And usually people don't doubt everything. They doubt something and believe in other things. I've never met anyone who really doubts everything. So there is a difference between believing and knowing. Believing is something that is not based upon experience, and knowing is something that is based upon experience. Your own experience, not that of others. Otherwise it's believing again. And once you experience something, you can still be skeptical, you can still doubt it to some degree, but for now, it's okay to assume that this is true until you have a better experience that replaces it. So what we need to do is to stay open, not to limit our scope by saying, okay, this is impossible anyway, or this is imagination anyway. or this is known anyway, or this cannot be known anyway, like Wittgenstein says, who was an idiot. Wittgenstein was one of the biggest idiots of recent history. He was very intelligent, but he had no wisdom at all whatsoever. It's pure mindfuck, and he influenced, unfortunately, analytical thinking and science more than most other philosophers in the last 100 years or so. He said that some things cannot be known, and of those there's no point to speak, think, or write. Which just proves that he has never looked inside. He had a big brain, but he didn't look inside and explore the inner universe, where there are infinite things you can experience. Things even you cannot imagine. They're literally beyond imagination. So to say that these things are possible and those are not, who was he to define that? You cannot, he could not, no one can. So my suggestion, find out for yourself if the idea of cosmic evolution, of human evolution, of conscious evolution is bullshit or not. Don't just believe it or reject it. Look inside, find your intuition, and be brave enough to experience stuff. This can be scary stuff, as I have said in other videos. These really deep, they're not really higher experiences, they're more deeper experiences. They can be super scary because they're very unusual. You've never experienced something like that, so everything new can be scary. And then you know, there's no point anymore to believe it or not to believe it. So I will give no definite answer here if there is something like evolution or not, if there is consciousness or not, if there is an evolution of consciousness or not. I rather invite you to find it out by yourself instead of believing anyone. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Thank you for joining me as a patron, and thank you for all my patrons. And see you soon.